Hey, Jody, welcome to the show.
Well, hi, it's great to be here.
We have talked over the years about getting you onto the podcast. I just ended Chasing Dreams, but I'm so glad I was able to get you onto this topic and conversation.
Well, yeah, this is probably going to be even better than what we would have talked about before.
It is, and that's because we're talking about podcasting. And we I'm trying to think back on how we met. It's I believe you were talking at Podcast Movement 15. I think it was 15 with Lee
That's
Cockrell,
right.
and you
Hmm.
were you were talking there, and I was a big fan of Lee because I had read his book, and I it was one of my favorite books on Disney leadership. And then find out he was doing a podcast, and you did an amazing talk and conversation, and we met and we talked, and Lee even took a photo with me. Um, it was surreal because I had just started podcasting, and so in 2015, do you remember how long you had been podcasting?
A year at that point.
A
Yeah,
year.
it had been a year.
What was that like? Because that was probably your first speaking engagement about podcasting, right?
Yeah, it was. It was. And that was my first speaking engagement with Lee, the first time we had ever shared the stage together. So
Wow.
that was a great I just love that one. One, because it was podcast movement and
Hmm.
it was a lot of people like you that were there, which was so much fun to talk with other podcasters. But it was my first time talking podcasting. It was my first time on stage with Lee Cockrell. And I remember this is so significant for me and showed me the power of podcasting is now I could talk a lot about that. But this was the first thing where I said, what in the world is going on? I'm on stage with Lee Cockrell and I look out into the crowd, and one of my favorite authors, Bob Berg, is in the crowd watching me speak. And I thought, I don't even understand this. How did this happen? So that still remains one of my favorite speaking opportunities because it was my first big conference, my first time talking podcasting. I'm on the stage with Lee. I look into the audience and Bob Berg is there. That was such a fun time.
And share with the audience what book did he author?
Bob Berg wrote The Go Giver. So he's written several others, but that's the big one. That's one of
Okay,
my yearly books. So I have some books that I read or listen to every year, and The Go Giver is one of them.
I'm writing it down. I got to read that. I love the fact that you and I both met our literary heroes in the audience in the
Yeah.
same conference and at the same talk. So
Yeah.
let let me set the stage for these guys, or have you set the stage? How did you get into podcasting? What was your journey?
Well, it was indirect. It
Hmm.
it was I would almost say almost that Jared Easley tricked me into it.
He has a way about that, right?
Yes, he does. So Jared Easley is wonderful, host of Starve the Doubts and the co-founder of Podcast Movement. And so there were two things going on at the same time. One is I had been a park ranger and I wanted a way to connect with parks still, and I couldn't figure it out. I was going to do a blog. That was my thought at the time. I would do a blog. Well, then separately, I told Jared Easley I knew someone who would make a good guest for his podcast. And he said, okay, I'll do it as long as you are co host with me. And I did terrible. Amy, I tell you, it's true. I did terrible. Jared is so good. And then I would just blurt out a question. I mean, no conversation. It was just like, what's your favorite color? But Jared was gracious and he had me back, and then he had me back. And then we started doing several episodes of
Hmm.
Starve the Doubts together. And at the time, this may or may not still be true, but at least at the time, I was the only one who Jared had ever have host his show if he couldn't be there.
Oh,
So that just showed me Jared taught me the power of podcasting. So I said, aha, I want to connect back to parks. Podcasting is a way to do it. So I launched the Park Leader Show in April of 2014, but I actually recorded the first 6 episodes in 2013, but I sat on them because I just thought, oh, I just don't like my voice. The show's no good.
Imposter syndrome.
But I finally did it. And oh my goodness, it's been such a fun path since. So that show came out in April 2014. And then later in 2014, Lee Cockrell and I launched a show together. And it's just been a wild ride ever since.
And now you have your own show, right?
I do. After doing so many other shows, I decided I was going to do my own show, and I gave it the clever title, The Jody Mayberry Show. And that one, I don't remember how many episodes I'm on, like 210, somewhere in that
I think it's 212 when I checked earlier. Yeah.
Okay.
So what I love about this is you've gone, it's for people who podcast, and I don't want to say do it right, but do it in a way that you don't pod fade. Like for those who don't pod fade, you know, mean you drop off or disappear, your podcast kind of lives in limbo with never being updated. There's something addictive about podcasting. Like you just, when your first one is done, you're like, what can I talk about next? What can I do next? And you have gone through that journey. How many podcasts would you say you've produced since you started? Been on, produced?
All shows combined, I've produced more than 1,500 episodes now. Yeah, it's been fun, and the average show lasts 7 episodes, the average podcast. But I've found once you get past 10 or 15, it's like the content just flows to you. You have so much to talk about that it's so easy after you get to a certain point to keep going. But unfortunately, a lot of people miss that because they fade away after 7 or 10 episodes.
Yep. And I find that comes with planning a little bit. I think a lot of people see the Joe Rogans and the Michelle Obama doing so wonderfully on Spotify, and you know they hear podcasting and people are like, that's easy. And then there are services like Anchor who make it free, and so you just go and you start podcasting, and then you forget, hey, this isn't a quick fix. You got to keep going. You keep going, and it goes and it goes. So Jody, what would you say for people who don't really understand podcasting? Any advice, because you've started more than one, you have 1,500 episodes under your belt. What are some tips? Well, give me your top 3 tips for success when starting a podcast.
Ooh, so for someone that's just about to start a podcast, if they're saying, what are your top 3? The first is record a few before you launch. I say 5. That's usually what I tell people. Record 5 episodes and then launch. Plan at least your first 10 to 15 before you get started, because that's the reasons a lot of people fade away is editing can be a pain in the butt. Now, independently, these might not derail somebody, but together they do. Editing can be a pain in the butt. It's hard to come up with new content every week, and enthusiasm gets you to 5, 6 episodes. 7 to 10, then you're running out of the I just launched enthusiasm. So plan out your episodes at least 10 to 15 in. And and then the third reason people fail, or not fail, but fade, is the Field of Dreams idea. If I record it, she will listen. It's not true. It doesn't happen. It takes time. And so if editing's a pain in the butt, plan of content's getting difficult to come up with, and I feel like there's not many people listening, then I just might give up. So I think just being aware of those going into it really helps. So record 5 episodes when you launch, plan out your first 10 to 15, and then just be aware of those 3 traps. That's what derails so many people in the beginning.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think lack of planning is what kind of sets people up for failure before they even realize it. And it's like, what are you going to do? Because that energy you have when you launch, that high you're riding on of, I'm a podcaster, I've launched, and you know, where is everybody who's supposed to be listening? It only gets you through. It never gets you to the double digits. I'm pretty sure it never gets you to the double digits. But, when you plan, there's something about knowing what your next step is that helps you keep going over and over. And it's gotten me through over, over 300 episodes for myself. Jody, over 1,500 episodes, right? So
Yeah.
take it from us. Plan. Now, Jody, as someone who has, you've done leadership, you've done park ranger leader, you've done the Jody Mayberry Show, which talks about marketing and kind of brand and setting yourself up. What is something you would tell people? Because I kind of see a pattern with the topics that you've chosen. But if somebody's like, hey, I'm interested in podcasting, what should I do? What do you tell them?
Well, I've also had the good fortune to record shows on real estate, for real estate agents and for sales, and a show called If Disney Ran Your Life, and one on travel writing. And that one was so fun because it was unexpected. We did 176 episodes of that show.
Wow.
And it was so fun. People, this is not the question you asked, but I'm going to answer a different question first.
Okay.
People would ask me, what's your favorite show to work on? And I said, no, that's not fair. I wouldn't do a show if I didn't know it was going to be great and I didn't know I would have fun. I wouldn't do it. But what show did I have the most fun on unexpectedly? It was the travel writing show, because it's so different than other shows that I did. And I got to meet so many people that got to live out their passion of travel writing and travel the world, and just incredible stories. So I've got to do, now I'm coming back to your question, I've got to do a variety of shows in different topics. And I think part of it is that if someone wants to start a show and they don't know what to talk about, then just pick something you're really passionate about. If you love to go camping, just start a show on camping. And what that will do, maybe you only get 20 episodes in and you realize, okay, camping's not for me. I'm not going to keep doing a show about camping, but I really like podcasting. I figured it out. And now I'm going to take on a topic I really want to do. So don't be afraid to launch a show that's not going to be your forever show. And that will just help you understand podcasting and what to do and how to do it and how to get good behind a microphone. So and I've worked on other shows where we knew there was a stopping point. If Disney Ran Your Life, we always knew there was 100 episodes from the beginning. We knew it was 100 episodes.
Planned out.
So you could even do a topic and say, okay, I really like gardening and I'm going to do 12 episodes on gardening and that's it. Or if you've written a book, maybe you do one episode for every chapter and that's it. And what you might find is when you get to the end, you're like, I love the topic and I love talking about it. I'm going to keep it going. Or, okay, I've played that one out, but I really enjoy podcasting and I'm going to start another one. Or perhaps you could find podcasting's not for me, because it's not for everybody. Maybe you should be blogging instead, but you can find that out by starting a podcast.
I love that advice, because oftentimes I think people think that once they start, they can't stop. If they stop, it's a failure. And, that's not the case, guys. I think what Jody is saying is have a plan, right? I mean, I just ended my podcast intentionally at 250, and that was intentional, right? Just like Jody talked about the 100 episodes for the was it the Disney podcast?
If Disney Ran Your Life, yes.
If Disney Ran Your Life podcast. And so as long as you have a plan and intention, go with it. I think we're so hung up on one way to do things, right? There's only one way to podcast, and that's not. There's so many ways, so many ways. What is something that surprised you, Jody, with podcasting, or that people would find surprising to learn about podcasting?
What I found surprising and delightful is people will talk to you that normally wouldn't because you have a podcast. Here's one great example.
Please.
The Park Leaders Show. I have had dinner with the director of the National Park Service and then had him as a guest on my show, where we just sat down under a a big grizzly bear that it wasn't alive. It was a taxidermy bear, right? But how, if I, as a citizen of the United States, if I just called up
Oh yeah.
the director of the National Park Service office and said, "Hey, I really love parks. I want to sit down and have dinner with the director and then talk to him for an hour," I'd never get a call back.
Yeah.
But because I have a podcast, it happened. Same with the director of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. I was able to talk to him for an hour. And authors, same thing. You can get almost any author to talk to you because you have a podcast, and that to me what is really delightful. It's not a surprise to me anymore. It was in the beginning how easy it became to get people to talk to you just because you have a podcast.
I I can't echo that enough, because I have had I've had writers of TV shows. I've had the creator of a TV show. And it's not surprising now, you're right, this many years in. But when I first started podcasting, when I got that yes, I was like, did I read it right? I had to get two people to read it to make sure I read the answer, that they were like, yes, we will talk to you. I'm like, that's amazing. But you're right. People are if you come to them correctly, let us caution everyone now. If you come to them properly, correctly, right? Don't attack them. Don't expect that they have to say yes and all that. Be polite. You could get almost anyone, right?
That it's right. You can get almost anyone, and Amy is right on. You've got to do it right. It has to. You have to do it the right way, and then you can get almost anybody.
Yeah. Have you ever had? What was your most surprising guest?
My most surprising guest was actually, believe it or not, Lee Cockrell. The first time he was on my show, because I had a show for park rangers. And I wanted to talk about what parks can learn from Disney, because I kept hearing from people with inside parks, we create our problems and then we try to think our own way out of them, and we're the ones that created them. But maybe we should look outside of parks for the answers. Places like, what are golf courses doing? What is Disney doing? And I thought, Disney, perfect. I'll get someone from Disney. But I didn't have any Disney connections, and I found the book Creating Magic on Amazon.
That's the book, guys. That's the book. That was the book that did it for me.
Great book. Yes, great book. So then I sent an email to the author, Lee Cockrell, and I assumed there's no way the guy that ran Disney World for a decade is going to come and talk on this tiny podcast about park rangers. What I didn't know is his sister-in-law was a park ranger for 30 years. So when I asked him, yeah, he said, of course, I'll come and talk. And that episode went well. So we did another one, and it was that second one that then led to us doing a show together. So I list him as a surprising guest because I truly didn't expect it. This was before I realized you really can get almost anyone on your show. And I thought, it's a long shot, but I make it a habit of letting people say no for themselves instead of me saying no for them. So I sent him the email and he said yes. And it was quite a shock at the time.
Jody, we can't skate over what you just said. We cannot skate over what you just said. You're going to let them say no instead of saying it for them. That's so powerful.
Well, how often do we do that though?
Yeah.
You might say, well, I'd like Lee Cockrell on the show, but he's going to say no. I'm not even going to waste my time. Well, I let him say no, but he didn't. He said yes. So, and there's, here's the other thing, Amy, no doesn't hurt. It doesn't physically hurt at all to have someone say no. So just let them do it. And no usually isn't even about you. It's about their time. It's about their commitments. It's about whatever else is going on. It's rarely about you.
It's usually a not yet.
Yeah.
It's usually a not yet for all the reasons you just stated. And sometimes, guys, you can follow it up with, is there a better time I can reach you? Or is there something else, right? Don't badger them. But, I think the key thing is, from all of this, like, I think podcasting has created for me relationships with my guests that I never would have had before, and people that I can reach out to that I never thought I could before. And, it's all in how you treat the relationship, right? I don't just treat them as a guest and that they're no name, but it's the pre, the post, the during, and the post, and how you treat them that means something. And I'm still in touch with a number of my guests now. What about yourself, Jody? Do you keep in touch with your guests, your past guests and people? Has that changed outside of Lee?
Yeah.
It's not fair to use Lee.
Yeah, it's not. Quite often I do, because I like to know what's going on with them. So if I have a guest on the show, at minimum, I'll send them a LinkedIn invitation to connect or follow them on Instagram, whatever, because I just like to know, because I know it's usually just a short conversation, but you talk about some good stuff, and then I feel kind of vested in their success and want to know what's going on and how they're doing. So I keep in touch with a lot of former guests, and I enjoy, especially on the Park Leader Show, having guests come back years later. In fact, one time, 2014, 2015, I had the director of South Carolina State Parks as a guest on the Park Leader Show. A few years after that, probably 2 years ago, he retired. And I reached out to him again, and I said, hey, congratulations on your retirement. Would you come back on the show and talk about your 40-year career with parks? Well, that went so well that now Phil Gaines, the retired director of South Carolina State Parks, is my guest co-host on about half of the episodes of the Park Leader Show.
Fantastic. I love that.
Oh, it's wonderful. And it came from just keeping in touch over the years, and the opportunity came, and he's such a popular guy in parks and had such a deep perspective. And it's so there's a great success story of staying in touch with guests.
I want to ask this question, but I have a feeling it's not that I know the answer, but let me ask you. I'll let you decide. So what is something that has surprised you about podcasting? Meaning it's impacted you in a surprising way. And here's an example. For me, podcasting has taken me, and I've talked about this before, to Nova Scotia, Canada, to the set of a TV show, to watch them record, to interview the cast and the crew of the TV show. Like, never in my life, if not for podcasting. And it's shown me, just like you said earlier, that podcasting changed lives. What was that moment for you?
I'm going to give you two, because there's two that are phenomenal. One is we recorded the first episode 1 of season, I don't know, the first season of If Disney Ran Your Life. We recorded in the observation deck of Kuwait Towers in Kuwait City. Who would have thought podcasting would take me literally halfway around the world? The other side of the globe is it
Seriously?
was, oh yeah, that was amazing. So that's one. The other surprising thing, the first time someone sent me an email talking about the impact of it, because you hope that happens, but you don't know what it's like until you finally get an email from someone saying, man, this episode, or I've been listening for a year. And man, that is so wonderful to realize the work, because when you podcast, it's just this tiny little circle around me. And it's easy to forget real people. Now, you tell yourself real people are listening to it, but it doesn't feel like it sometimes. And when you get that feedback about that episode really made a difference, or man, your podcast, I've been listening for years and this is the impact it's had. That to me was something I hoped for. And it was a surprise how much better it is than you think it will be.
So Jody, I love that. I love that. For recognition or acknowledgement or feedback in podcasting isn't popular. I mean, people don't know. They listen to their podcast and they think that's all they do. But when you get that rare feedback or piece of feedback from in an email, a direct message, or something, or somebody bumps into you and says, "Hey, are you the host of? And I love your podcast." And you're just like, "Thank you." What? It kind of puts a solid form to something you've just imagined, and just to kind of set the stage. You're not, when you start a podcast, you're not going to be overflowing with feedback from people. Some podcasts are. Don't get me wrong. It can happen. But I just, and I'll see if Jody co-signs. You're not always going to get verbal or written feedback from people saying they appreciate your show. It's oftentimes goes unseen, but it doesn't mean it's
Yeah.
not happening. Would you agree with that, Jody?
Well, you're right on, because people will listen to it and say, "Oh man,
Mm-hmm.
Amy does a great job." They'll say that to themselves, and then they'll keep driving to work or walking their dog,
Yeah.
and that's actually why you don't get much feedback. It's hard to get podcast listeners to take action, not because they don't like you, not because they don't care. Just think about what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You're intimate in their head, in their ears, for 15, 30 minutes, however long your episodes are, but they're often driving or doing the dishes or walking their dog or gardening. They're not in a setting that makes it really easy to reach out to you. So that's the one thing in all podcasting I'd love more of, and
Yeah.
and I get enough of it that it keeps me happy. But man, I would be great to get even more feedback,
Yeah.
because you hear from such a small percentage of the
Mm-hmm.
listening audience. And I've even heard some people they're on episode like 15 and they're saying, I haven't heard from anybody. I don't
Yeah.
even know if people care. And I'm like, listen, it's not you. They're listening, but it's just podcast listeners are a hard group to get to respond to what you're doing. Sometimes they'll listen to 100 episodes before you ever hear from them.
I'll say this too, and this is, stay humble. But once you start podcasting, I think people start equating you with that unattainable person, right? Just as we see some of our guests, like, who are they to say yes to me or speak to me? I could never reach them, or I can never speak to them. In some ways, I think sometimes listeners think podcasters are unreachable, when in actuality, we're the easiest people to reach, whether it's social media, email, our contact information is always somewhere. But I think there's a belief of that as well that kind of plays a part in it.
Yeah, and that could be part of it, that you just might think, well, I listen to Amy's show every week, and who am I to just
Yeah.
reach out to her and say hi? But the truth is, all podcasters love it. I've
Yes.
not met a podcaster yet that says, "My goodness, I hate to hear from my audience. They're always bugging me." It just doesn't happen.
Does it have, like, are you sure they were a podcaster? That's what we would ask you. Are you sure they were a podcaster? Because
Yeah.
I think any creator would love to get feedback from the people that they are creations for,
Yeah. Now, here's some very fun, interesting feedback I've gotten, and it's happened more than once.
Okay.
I have been at a conference or a setting like that, and all right, I'm thinking of one conference in particular. I was talking, and there was someone out of sight on the other side of a wall, uh, and they popped around and said, "Are you Jody Mayberry?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "I heard your voice. I knew it had to be you."
That
That's
is
just that's
awesome.
yeah, that's a great way to get some feedback.
I love it. I love it. And so, guys, definitely take that to heart. I mean, if you don't get anything, especially in your early episodes, it doesn't
Mhm.
mean people aren't listening. If people don't put a rating and review, it doesn't mean people aren't listening. It's not like a curriculum in school where they teach you how to be a good podcast listener. It's just something people don't know about. So keep
Yeah,
that in mind.
that's right. And also consider, how many books do you read that you go and leave a review for on Amazon? Not many. I would like to say I do it for every book I read, but oh my goodness, I rarely do it. And I'm sure as soon as I have a book out, I'm going to say, why aren't people leaving reviews? And then I look at myself and say, well, I rarely
They're
do it.
probably like
So
me, right? They're probably like me. Jody,
yeah.
thank you so much for taking the time. I love talking to you, man. I'm so happy we were able to connect, even despite the pandemic and whatnot. I was able to see you this year since we're not going to be at podcast conferences together.
Yeah, that's right. We do what we can, and in the last 18 months or so, this is the best way to do it, to stay connected. So thanks for inviting me. It's always great to talk podcasting.